On the thermal imaging screen, that heat source was moving. No, not moving. It was propelling itself in a way that defied the structure of its joints, its limbs pushing backward, its torso flattened against the ground like a crushed lizard. The speed was constant at 30 kilometers per hour. No acceleración, no deceleración. Luke's hand hovered over the switch for the armored vehicle's searchlight. 11 o'clock, dry riverbed, he said. The beam of the searchlight sliced through the night. The moment the hotspot was illuminated, it stopped, not slowing down to a stop, but an instantaneous halt from 30 kilometers per hour to absolute stillness with no transition frames. It faced away from us. The silhouette was humanoid, but the proportions were wrong. The shoulders were too narrow, the pelvis too wide, the spine's curvature as if it had been shattered and reassembled. The skin's surface was covered in a layer of charred, blackened texture, absorbing all light under the searchlight, as if swallowing it whole. Luke picked up the megaphone. Standard border lockdown commands, alternating between Spanish and English. The megaphone emitted a harsh, screeching sound of electrical interference, then shut off by itself. The humanoid began to turn its head. The rotation of its neck exceeded human anatomical limits. 180 degrees, 220 degrees, then it stopped. The beam of the searchlight bent at the position of its face, as if refracted by a high-density medium. The light did not illuminate its face. Instead, it curved around it. No, the face itself was the thing that was rotating, a slowly spinning, miniature spiral structure. It wasn't the absence of facial features, but the replacement of that space with something else. A dark purple base with silver light points orbiting at a precise angular velocity, like a starfield forcibly compressed into that area. No eyes, no mouse, just spinning. The searchlight began to strobe. The frequency shifted from steady 120 Hz to a rhythmic pattern of long and short pulses. 3 long, 3 short, 3 long. S. Oh, S. Luke's body slammed into the door. His hand was already on his weapon, but his fingers weren't on the trigger. Instead, they repeatedly made the motion of disassembling the barrel. He looked down at his hands, his lips moving silently. The humanoid began to double, then triple. Not motion blur. It existed simultaneously in 3 adjacent spatial positions, each image performing a different action. One stepping to the left, one squatting in place, one remaining still. Then all 3 images tore apart, as if the video signal had been dragged when the vertical sync failed. 3 seconds. It vanished. The space seemed to zip closed, swallowing whole. The searchlight returned to normal. The riverbed was empty. A mechanical voice crackled over the radio. Calm. Steady. It didn't announce our unit number or coordinates. It said, error. Causal relationship lost. Attempting to reestablish. Reestablish failed. Pause. You're already here. At 2:11 a.m., the border lockdown order was issued. Level maximum. Radius 15 kilometers centered on the dry riverbed. The enforcement unit changed from the Border Patrol to a rapid response team that didn't identify itself over the communication channels. Their commander introduced himself as Major Harper. Department, Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, Biotechnology Security Division. This division does not exist in official records. Harper's briefing was completed in the back of the armored vehicle, taking 4 minutes and 30 seconds. The core information was as follows. 1. The object we encountered is marked as Escher, a non-cooperative spatial return entity. 2. It has crashed in the desert interior, and the exact coordinates need to be relocked. 3. As 0-point contactors, Luke and I must be integrated into the search team. Your perception has been calibrated, Harper said. You can see its true form. He handed over an encrypted tablet. The screen displayed an infrared satellite image, taken just 10 minutes ago. A line of red text was annotated on the image. Logical breakdown rate is accelerating. The convoy set off. 6 armored vehicles, 2 unarmed reconnaissance drones. The target coordinates refreshed every 30 seconds, each time changing, jumping from point A to a point 3 kilometers away, and back to a midpoint between A and C. The navigation system was constantly correcting a path that didn't exist. At 3:07 a.m., the coordinates finally stabilized. The vehicle stopped at the edge of a massive sand pit. The object at the center of the pit was not an escape pod. It was not any known metallic or composite structure. It was a cocoon, milky white, its surface curved in non-Euclidean geometry. The gaze would slide off it, deflected, unable to capture its entire form at once. The surface undulated slowly like living skin, pulsing. Parts of it were charred and cracked, oozing a rainbow-hued, viscous fluid from the fissures. A 2-meter tear was ripped open along the side of the cocoon. The edges were curled outward, still twitching slowly. On the sand in front of the tear was a trail of footprints. Footprints. The tread of military boots was clearly defined. The spacing was normal. The depth was normal. But there were only footprints leading away, none approaching. The first print was half a meter from the edge of the tear, as if it had stepped into this world from a place that never existed. The search team followed the footprints. The signal turned due north 500 meters from the cocoon, then vanished. Not buried by sand, the footprints went from full depth to zero in a single step. Data streamed through the comms from the reconnaissance aircraft. 3 kilometers to the north, a moving heat source was advancing toward the border barrier at 58 kilometers per hour, nearly twice as fast as during the first encounter. Harper's voice crackled over the channel. Coordinates locked. All units assume pursuit formation. The mine-resistant ambush vehicles restarted. The rumble of engines spread across the desert, only to be drowned out by a low-frequency vibration that belonged to no known bandwidth. The vibration came from the direction of the cocoon. It was resonating at some frequency like breathing or like a countdown accelerating. The cocoon's resonance frequency was rising. For seconds after Harper's command, before the convoy had completed its turn, the low-frequency vibration jumped from 20 hertz to 120, then to 2000 before vanishing. Not fading, swallowed instantly by some sound-absorbing medium. The night sky returned to the desert's default soundscape. Wind, sand grating against vehicle hulls, idling engines. The moving heat signature from the low-altitude reconnaissance aircraft suddenly split due north. One target became 3, then 5. The next instant, all signals went dark simultaneously. The operator reported. Thermal imaging array overloaded. Cause unknown. Harper ordered the reconnaissance aircraft to return. 2 drones went missing in succession on their way back. The first lost signal 1, 3 kilometers from the convoy. The second lasted 11 seconds longer, transmitting one final frame. The cocoon's tear was widening. All personnel, dismount, Harper said. Advance on foot. 11 rapid response soldiers fanned out in a semicircle. Luke and our position on the left flank, roughly 40 meters from the cocoon. Moonlight conditions were good. Sand reflectivity was around 35%. The surface details of the cocoon were clearly visible to the naked eye. The charred, cracked areas were expanding, their edges slowly curling like burning paper. The fluid seeping from the fissures was no longer rainbow-hued, but had turned an absolute black that reflected no wavelength. A soldier approached the left side of the cocoon. His designation was Marchand, the medic ordered to collect a fluid sample. His movements were precise, fluid, left hand holding a sample tube, right hand gripping a sterile scraper. He bent down, reached out. The tip of the scraper was about 5 centimeters from the fluid surface. Then his right hand passed straight through the target. His hand penetrated the cocoon wall and the fluid without resistance, bending back unnaturally, clamping tightly onto the flashlight mounted on his tactical vest. He gripped the flashlight. Slowly, steadily, he turned the light inward and shoved it into his own mouth. Throughout the entire process, Marchand's facial muscles showed no contraction, no front, no widened eyes. His lips closed automatically around the flashlight as it entered like a reverse swallowing reflex. The soldier, standing 2 meters to his right, froze. Everyone froze. The flashlight lit up inside Marchand's mouth. White light shone through the inside of his cheek. turning his facial tissue into a translucent orange red. Cheekbones, maxillary sinuses, the outlines of tooth roots, like an overexposed X-ray. He remained standing, breathing normally. A pulse was visible on the side of his neck, roughly 80 beats per minute. Someone pulled the trigger. Not an order, not a tactical decision. A finger bypassed the brain's command chain out of sheer fear. The bullet shot toward the cocoon. Its trajectory curved midair. Not an arc, a precise, sharp angle. The bullet veered suddenly about a meter from the cocoon's surface, reversed course, and struck the shooter's own right shoulder. The shoulder armor failed to intercept, not due to penetration, but because the trajectory found its way through the armor's seams. The shooter collapsed. His rifle disassembled itself before he hit the ground. Barrel, body, bolt, magazine. The four parts scattered along unpredictable trajectories, landing to form a geometric pattern, an equilateral triangle, each side equal in length. "Cease fire," Harper shouted, but a fourth soldier had already fired, then a fifth. Every bullet followed the same logic, leaving the barrel, approaching the cocoon, being intercepted by some unknown rule, then hurtling back along its original path. The bullets shot backward, as if time were flowing in reverse, erasing all known physics in an instant. Two soldiers were struck by their own rounds. One hit the outer thigh, the other pierced the left palm. A visual anomaly appeared near the bullet's deflection point. The air warped there like heat haze, but the thermometer read 17 degrees, no heat source. The distortion was expanding, spreading outward from the cocoon in concentric circles. Then someone shouted. Not a word, not a command, a series of torn-apart vowels. On the other side of the cocoon, directly behind the fissure, stood something, a humanoid silhouette, shoulders too narrow, pelvis too wide. The curvature of its spine matched no known human template. It faced us. The spiral structure where its face should be was still rotating, but accelerating from one revolution every 3 seconds to about half a second per cycle. The density of the star field within increased, the spiral arms doubling from 2 to 4, the internal points of light arranged asymmetrically. Its body didn't move, but the air around it was folding in some way. Moonlight bent within a 1-meter radius behind it, forming a spherical zone of visual distortion. Sand, gravel, the outline of distant mountains. All light passing through this area was rerouted, like water flowing around an invisible reef. Harper raised his rifle, aimed, didn't pull the trigger. He said, "Everyone, do not focus your gaze." His voice had changed. The originally low, steady tone was replaced by a mechanical resonance, like two recordings of different frequencies playing simultaneously. There were microsecond delays between the words. Do not observe with intent. Treat it as background noise. The soldiers complied, not because they understood, but because the command was the last remaining anchor of logic still functioning. Eyes unfocused, visual attention shifted to the edge of the cocoon, the sand, the distant night sky. Anywhere but that thing. The formation tightened, shifting from a fan into a loose arc. The thing stood, motionless. The distortion zone stopped expanding. The spiral's rotation slowed, from half a second per cycle back to 3 seconds, then holding steady. This lasted about 40 seconds. Then Marchand's body began to move. His hand, the one still gripping the flashlight, shoved into his mouth, slowly withdrew. The flashlight slid from his oral cavity, trailing a thin strand of viscous fluid. The light was still on. He looked down at it, expressionless. Then he switched off the flashlight, slotted it back into his tactical vest, and returned to his position in the formation. The soldier shot in the shoulder still lay on the sand. Across from him, the triangular firearm components began reassembling themselves. The barrel slid back into the receiver locked onto the bolt, the magazine snapped into place. Once complete, the safety catch automatically disengaged. Harper's tablet lit up. A line of text appeared on the screen. The font was standard military sans serif. White, against pure black. Escher, contact point 0. Response verification complete. Contamination radius, approximate 50 meters. Trigger condition, hostile intent. Countermeasure, non-focused monitoring. All forms of active contact prohibited. Repeat, active contact prohibited. The source was listed as Tier 0. Tier 0 did not exist in the chain of command. Harper's lips moved. The sound that emerged was still dual-layered. One ahead, one behind. The delay now stretched to about 0. 3 seconds. He said, "Hold position." The thing still stood on the other side of the cocoon. The rotation had slowed, but not stopped. The blood on the sand appeared black under the moonlight, slowly seeping between the grains. The wounded soldier's breathing was faint. No one spoke. Above the dome, the Milky Way spanned the entire sky. Starlight fell upon the surface of the cocoon, deflected by its non-Euclidean curves toward unpredictable directions. From a certain angle, the cocoon's outline scribed a non-existent constellation into the night sky, a pattern recorded on no star chart. That pattern consisted of 7 stars, arranged like a disassembled arrow, pointing toward the ground, pointing toward where the thing stood, pointing toward us. The whole position lasted 1 hour and 4 minutes. Harper's tablet refreshed with instructions from Tier 0 every 90 seconds. The content of the instructions gradually narrowed from prohibit active contact to maintain non-focused monitoring, until finally only one line remained: await synchronization completion. The entity labeled Escher did not move during this time. It stood about 3 meters before the cocoon's fissure, the facial spiral rotating at constant angular velocity. Body temperature, undetectable. Mass, undetectable. Infrared imaging returned only snowstorm noise at its location. The wounded soldier received emergency bandaging. Marchand's procedure was by the book: stop the bleeding, clean the wound, apply the dressing, secure it. The same hands that, an hour earlier, had shoved a flashlight into his own mouth. No one mentioned it. Harper's ignore protocol was becoming routine. Soldiers rotated watch every 2 minutes. Each shift no more than 10 seconds of direct observation. Their focus fixed 10 centimeters outside the target's edge. Not looking at it, looking at the space around it. It worked. Trajectories no longer curved. The visual distortion zone gradually shrank to within 3 meters of the target. Communications were restored, but only on the low-frequency tech system. Recon drones came back online via backup channels, establishing a new monitoring grid at 2,000 meters. The cocoon's resonance had stopped. The fissure was no longer expanding. At 4:22, Harper received a new order. Approach for sampling authorized. Restrictions: no contact. Target: detached material, outer cocoon wall. Tools: non-metallic. 2 soldiers were chosen, not Marchand. Mission duration: 7 minutes. They approached the right side of the cocoon, opposite Escher's position. Their steps were slow. Their gaze remained unfocused. One held a non-metallic sampling clamp, the other a sealed container. Near a scorched, cracked area of the cocoon wall, a palm-sized piece of milky white tissue had naturally detached. Its edges were dry, translucent. Its surface was textured, not random cracks, but neatly arranged symbols. The clamp grasped the tissue's edge, lifted, placed into the container, sealed. Throughout, Escher stood on the other side of the cocoon, did not turn, did not alter its rotation speed. But the instant the container sealed, a single character appeared simultaneously on every text screen in the comm channel. An apostrophe at the beginning of a sentence. With no main clause. 4:30. The sample was transferred to the field analysis unit, a modified biohazard detection vehicle parked 20 meters upslope from a sandpit. Results: the tissue was composed of an unknown polymer, no nucleic acids, no known amino acids, structure similar to keratin, but molecular arrangement incompatible with any known biological taxonomy. Then a technician spoke up. There's writing on it. Everyone crowded around the monitor. Magnification, 400x. On the inner surface of the cocoon tissue, symbols were generating at a rate of 12 frames per second. Their combination followed English grammar: subject, predicate, object, modifiers, complete structure. The font matched standard military documentation. The content was a real-time transcript of the current conversation. "Let me see that," appeared on screen 0 for seconds before the technician said it. Next line, Harper said, "Continue monitoring." Before Harper could even open his mouth, "continue monitoring" was already on the screen. It was predicting, not listening and repeating, writing the words before they were spoken. Then deviations began. Harper said, "What is this thing doing?" The screen's transcript read, "This thing is imitating." The nature of the deviations shifted from word substitution to subject replacement to complete sentence restructuring. It recorded Harper's order, "Everyone fall back 5 meters," as "Everyone advance to the point of contact." The deviations grew larger. Word order reversed. Vocabulary began combining on its own. A long string of perfectly grammatical, utterly meaningless sentences appeared on screen. Flawless syntax, zero logic. Like a system learning how to lie. Harper stared at the screen. His dual vocal tones had nearly synced, but there was still a delay of about 0.1 seconds. He pressed send, reporting the sampling results to command. The tablet screen flickered. The error code that returned was not from any standard protocol. It was a line of text. Level 0. Message received. Your description does not match reality. Reconfirm your position. The font was white. The background pure black. Then a symbol appeared in the lower right corner of the screen. That initial apostrophe, now positioned at the end of a sentence. Followed by a word. Run. Harper looked up. On the other side of the cocoon, Escher still stood. Motionless. Rotation constant. But the sand around it was beginning to move. Not from the wind. Every grain was converging toward its base at the exact same speed in the exact same direction. The word run on the tablet screen flashed 3 times, then went dark. Harper did not give the order to retreat. His lips were moving, but the delay between his dual vocal tones had stretched to about 0.7 seconds. One voice ahead, the other behind, like 2 people on different timelines speaking the same syllable of the same sentence. Then his voice split completely. One was saying, "All units hold Posey." The other was saying, "Tyen, run." 2 commands arrived simultaneously. The soldiers froze in place, their minds trapped between conflicting orders, some turning while remaining stationary, left legs stepping forward as right legs stayed rooted, bodies torn between opposing vectors of motion. Then the tissue samples in the monitoring vehicle began to glow. Not bioluminescence, not chemiluminescence. This was a physical paradox. Light collapsing inward from the surface of the tissue, brightness inversely proportional to time, growing more intense even as the luminous area shrank. It condensed into a point of infinite radiance before vanishing entirely. The sample was gone. The container remained sealed. Internal pressure unchanged. A palm-sized physical entity had been reduced to 0 within a closed system. Then the light reappeared, not inside the container, but outside, hovering above the chrysalis at the center of the sandpit. It expanded, detonated. Not light, information. In that instant, I perceived 32 colors simultaneously, not through my eyes, but injected directly into my mind. 17 of them did not exist in the visible spectrum. I could smell right angles, a scent like rust, ozone, stomach acid at the back of the throat, and yet none of them. I heard the synthesized electron voices of the sand, each grain's silica content translating into a precise pitch, the entire desert performing a symphony written in mineral composition. I closed my eyes. Vision did not cease. A motionless deluge hung in the air, raindrops suspended mid-fall, neither rising nor descending, refracting impossible wavelengths of moonlight. Each droplet contained a microscopic scene. Marchand shoving the flashlight into his mouth, the moment cloned 1,000 times, replayed in every raindrop from slightly different angles. I opened my eyes. The rain remained. Luke's body lurched forward in a sprint. His face twisted toward the convoy, toward retreat, yet his limbs carried him toward the chrysalis at a steady 30 kilometers per hour. His mouth gaped, his throat looping a single word. Fall back, fall back, fall back. His legs accelerated. Major Harper's right hand raised a sidearm. The muzzle pressed against his temple. His index finger tapped the trigger guard, not pulling, but performing the motions of ejecting a magazine. The gun did not move. His left hand shredded his ID photos one by one, tearing them into perfect squares, arranging the pieces in the sand. His expression was blank. The entire sandpit had become a place where cause and effect unraveled. One soldier attempted to drop prone, but remained rigidly upright. Another tried to scream, but recited precise weapon handling protocols instead. Two men moved toward each other only to retreat along mirrored vectors, their distance widening. I tried to check my weapon. My right hand reached for my holster, but struck Luke's back instead. He was already 15 meters from the chrysalis, still shouting asterisk, fall back. Asterisk, my hand began unbuckling my tactical vest, methodically disengaging each clasp in sequence. I watched my own limbs execute commands I never gave. Disarm, discard, advance. My left leg stepped forward, then my right. I was moving. The frozen rain above the chrysalis shifted. Every droplet changed direction at once. Not a physical turn, but a rewrite in time. One frame suspended, the next already striking the ground without acceleration. No wetness marked the sand. Each raindrop transformed into an identical grain upon impact. Still I walked. The intervals between steps stretched, not from slowing down, but from time itself dilating. I felt each grain slide beneath my boot, every particle's friction coefficient distinct. 10 meters to the chrysalis. Escher's spiraled face had stopped rotating, forearms locked at asymmetrical angles. The interior lights no longer orbited but fixed into a formation, 7 points. A perfect match for that impossible constellation in the galaxy. It was watching me, not asterisk in my direction. Asterisk, it was aligned with my vantage point. My left and right eyes receiving mismatched parallax from its face, violating spatial logic. No matter where I moved, its gaze remained locked onto me. My fingers unclasped the last buckle. The tactical vest hit the sand. A voice crackled through the comms. Not Harper, not any soldier. Escher. The voice erupted from every communication device, calibrated to the optimal frequency response of each speaker. The timbre was mine. The pitch was mine. The phrasing was mine, but spoken a language. Perfect grammar, precise pronunciation, clear enunciation of vowels and consonants. Every sentence adhered to the syntactical structure of English, the tense and subject-verb agreement. It made no sense if you have already departed before arriving, because the sand learned to count but forgot the numbers. Retreat is the only way forward, towards the place that is not, towards the time that has not yet occurred. The voice paused, then it shifted to a different timbre. Not mine, Harper's. I have learned. The opening in the cocoon began to expand. Not a tear, but a slow, muscular dilation, like a sphincter, the edges gradually widening to reveal the interior. The interior was not a cavity. It was another sky, not the sky of Earth. The density of stars was higher than in the galactic core. The arrangement of the stars matched the arrow-shaped constellation etched above the cocoon, point for point. The arrow pointed at me. My legs were moving. Luke was approaching the edge of the opening. Harper's pistol finally slipped from his hand. The fragments of the ID photos scattered by an inexplicable current of air, landing on the triangular pattern of the gun's components. All the screens in the detection vehicle lit up simultaneously. Each screen displayed the same message, refreshing at a rate of 3,000 lines per second. Error. Causal relationship lost. Reestablishing. Reestablish failed. Learning. 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 Luke stopped 5 meters from the opening. His legs ceased running. His mouth stopped shouting retreat. His face remained turned backward toward the convoy, toward the sum of all vectors known as safe distance. But his body began to turn, waist first, then hips, and finally feet. The sequence was entirely reversed. He faced the opening. A syllable escaped his mouth. Not a word. A simple combination of an intake of breath and a glottal stop, like an infant's first meaningless sound. Then his right hand rose, index finger pointing at the cocoon, as if identifying a target he had always known but never seen. My partner, Luke Cortez, a 10-year veteran of the Border Patrol, performed his final recognizable action 5 meters from the breach of that topological prison. squatting in a standard tactical stance, unstrapping his canteen and pouring the water slowly onto the sand before him. The sound of water seeping into the sand was amplified in the absolute silence. Harper's dual voices finally separated, one saying requesting support, the other saying requesting termination. Both voices were equally steady, equally coming from his throat, equally devoid of emotion. His hands had finished tearing the ID photos and were now tearing his tactical gloves. Piece by piece, each piece of equal size. The technician in the detection vehicle repeatedly hit his forehead against the screen. At a constant frequency, every 2 seconds. The error, causal relationship lost, message continued to refresh. Each line interspersed with new strings. Learning, imitating, replacing. Escher stood on the other side of the opening. The spiral on its face began to rotate again, but in the opposite direction. Previously clockwise, now counterclockwise. The points of light contracted inward from the spiral's tips, like a reversed explosion. The outline of its body flickered under the moonlight. Not because it was moving, but because the space it occupied was trembling. I realized I was counting the sand, not figuratively. My brain was calculating the number of grains, the size distribution, the percentage of mineral composition under my feet at a rate of hundreds per second. This calculation was not initiated by me, but it consumed all my attention. I wanted to stop, but the stop command was intercepted. It was translated into continue. My right hand had just completed the last buckle on my tactical vest. The vest fell onto the sand. My left hand began to unclip my belt. Then my right hand pressed down on my left. This was not an order, not a decision. It was muscle memory, instinct honed over a decade of law enforcement. The last automated program running after all logical chains were severed. Right hand pressing down on left. No, you can't unclip anymore. In that moment, my vision focused. Not that tactical disregard had failed. My viewpoint was allowed to focus. The non-existent 7th point of light at the center of Escher's facial spiral was aligning with my pupils. It allowed me to see. The tablet, Harper's encrypted tablet, dropped on the sand, beside the bloodstain, among the fragments of the ID photos. The screen no longer displayed the level, 0 command format. It scrolled a line of red text, exactly the same as what I had seen on the satellite image of the riverbed point 0 5 hours earlier. The rate of logical collapse is accelerating. The cursor flickered. Escher is not a weapon. It is not a living organism. It is a living paradox, a set of logical contradictions that overwrite the cause and effect of reality. Method of overwrite, implanting false information apologies. Method of resistance, ineffective. Any logical countermeasure will be learned by it. Any deception will be decompiled. It will become faster, more precise, more irreversible. The cursor flashed again, but it is a prisoner. The cage is a cocoon. The breach is a lock. The lock is a one-way door from the inside out. From the inside out. Footprints only moved away. None came closer. A one-way door. One way. Only out, never in. What did this mean in reverse? In that moment, a primal instinct struck my brain like an electric jolt. Block the door. With the simplest physical action, create a causal chain that it cannot contradict, cannot learn, cannot decompile. It is a prisoner, and what you must do is close the door to escape from. My hand still pressed against my left hand. I could feel it struggling. It wanted to continue disarming. It believed it was executing a correct command. But another instruction was rising from a deeper place, not from the brain, but from the spine. Forward. I took a step, then another. The direction was not toward Escher, but toward the space behind it, toward the cocoon, toward the breach. My legs began executing an untaught command, walking toward the center of a paradox, not to fight, but to mend a crack in the causal chain. Each step resisted another command. Crouch, unbuckle, count the sand, speak in reverse. Each step felt like lifting my leg through waist-deep wet cement. But I could sense that Escher's spiral rotation was changing, not accelerating. It was a chaotic tremor. The angles of the spiral arms were asymmetrical. The arrow-shaped constellation with 4 spiral arms, originally symmetrical, now had one arm short. It noticed me. More precisely, It noticed the uncontaminated information packet within me driving physical actions. This was an action it could not comprehend. It had no sealed reverse information. It knew only how to escape. Not returning, that too was a direction. At the edge of the sand pit, a soldier was drawing circles in the sand with the muzzle of his gun. Perfect pi. 3, 141, 5926. He continued to 30 decimal places. He was reciting the numbers, tears streaming down his wide-open eyes. His body knew the horror. His brain was calculating pi. Harper was already on his knees. His mouth finally uttered a third word. Not a double tone, not a delay, but a clean, pure word belonging to Major Harper himself. Hurry. When he said this, he looked directly at me. Not a defocused monitoring. Not background noise. Direct visual contact. He used his last uncontaminated will to draw a straight line between me and the breach. I caught that line. Left leg lifted. Down. Right leg lifted. Down. 7 steps to the breach. 6. The alien sky within the breach continued to rotate. 5. I could feel the topological core on the ground in a piece of charred shell fragment. Escher's body moved for the first time. It leaned forward by half a degree, not walking, but the space it stood in tilted. It began to distort my spatial perception, just as it would twist a bullet. The desert bent around me. 7 steps became 20, then 50. My sense of direction was flooded with erroneous data. North became down. Gravity became back. My body momentarily believed it. My left leg missed a step, and my entire torso tilted to the right at a 32-degree angle. But I did not fall, because the uncontaminated command was faster than my balance. My spine had already recalibrated itself without relying on gravity. It did not depend on direction. It moved forward with absolute positioning toward the breach. That was the only unchanging reference point, because that was the only absolute statement of this paradox machine. It is a prisoner, and this is the place it escaped from. On the 5th step, space shattered. Not a metaphor. The sand under my feet visually fractured into a grid of cracks, like a point struck on glass. The cracks extending across non-existent surfaces to non-existent distances. The sand did not break. The physical substance beneath my feet remained intact. What shattered was the layer of reality it occupied. My left leg passed through the fractured layer. Below the knee, it vanished. Not cut off, visual signal still transmitted. I saw my boot, my pant leg, the tourniquet tied around my ankle. They were there, but their coordinates were not where I expected them to be. My left calf appeared 7 meters behind me, stepping on the sand. Then my right calf appeared 2 meters to the left. I was being disassembled. Escher was running at full capacity, not bending space, but dismantling the object. It treated me as a collection of coordinate data, methodically altering the positional information of each component. My left hand was 20 centimeters in front of me. My sense of touch told me it was clenched in a fist, but my vision showed it clawing at sand above my head. The grain slipped through my fingers, raining down onto my chest, but my chest wasn't there. It was half a meter to the left. I tried to take the 6th step. My brain issued the command. My right leg lifted 5 centimeters before another neural signal overrode it. The leg lowered, lifted again, overridden again, up, down, down. The frequency accelerated. My right leg began oscillating rapidly between motion and stasis, like a seized piston. Escher was executing 2 mutually exclusive commands simultaneously, forcing my body into deadlock. It had learned that walking and not walking could coexist. Harper shouted a single word from the distance. His voice cut through the fractured layers of space because the molecular arrangement of air remained untouched. Sound waves still traveled normally. _breathe. _I inhaled. Exhaled. My spine was the last autonomous system still functioning. It didn't need commands from the brain. No logic chain. No causality. Inhale as cause, exhale as effect. The simplest loop still intact. The spine seized control of movement. I fell forward, not walking, just shifting my center of gravity, letting physics handle the rest. My body tilted past the critical angle, and then I didn't fall. The direction of gravity changed. Forward became down. Down became 45 degrees up and to the side. I was falling toward a ground that existed at a diagonal. A ground that wasn't there. Yet I plummeted toward it. Escher had dismantled the last parameter I used to comprehend space. No directions. No reference. The desert could exist at any angle, now manifesting in quantum superposition across every vector. I closed my eyes. Not defense, not surrender, just shutting down a corrupted data stream. Visual input had become unreliable, and relying on it would only plunge my motor functions deeper into chaos. In darkness, there were no directions, but there was sound. My own voice. Underscore falling down is moving forward. Backward is upward. Direction is habit. No, direction is a lie. Underscore the voice spoke in paradox. My vocal cords vibrated. I hadn't told them to. It was using my mouth, my throat, my lungs, speaking in its own language. Flawlessly structured nonsense, self-contained illogic. It had infiltrated my vocal system, but the vibrations gave me a coordinate. The Adam's apple, dead center of the neck. Neck above the torso. Torso connected to asterisk here. Asterisk, I rebuilt my body map using the throat as origin. Mouth above, vocal cords within. I shut my jaw, teeth clamping the side of my tongue. Pain, a clean neural signal. Botway intact. Asterisk, tongue tip lingual nerve mandibular nerve trigeminal ganglion pons asterisk. It hadn't learned to falsify pain yet. I bit down harder. White hot agony detonated in my mouth. Worse than any dental procedure, because my brain could no longer modulate intensity. Binary now, all or nothing. I chose all. Pain shattered the distortions. In this chaos, it became the only unalterable coordinate. Within that suffering, I reclaimed one command. Asterisk jaw locked. Bite held. No release. Asterisk the body map recalibrated. Pain as anchor. Radiating nerve pathways as axis. Right arm extended from torso. Right hand fisted. Fingers curled into palm. Tactile feedback normal. Damp. Grit pressing into skin. Sand was real. Sand didn't lie. Asterisk, where was it? Asterisk, the breach lay in the direction of my feet. No. Asterisk west star. Distance unknown. I was caught in the fractures between spaces, in the gaps Escher's calculations left exposed. Gravity, orientation, distance, all rewritten. But one parameter couldn't be falsified. The breach. It was there, no matter how space warped. That was the only absolute reference. Sixth step, eyes closed. My foot met solid ground. Sand pressed back normally. Physical space hadn't shattered. Only my perception of it had. The desert had been here all along. I opened my eyes. The breach stood before me, 1.5 meters away. Escher waited on the other side. Its spiraling face had frozen, for arms locked at asymmetric angles. Starlight flickered across its surface. Not rhythmic pulses, but erratic, unpredictable, like the final error logs of a collapsing program. It had sensed it. Now it began stripping away my sense of time. Step, land, the interval between vanishes. Not acceleration. The process itself is excised. Frames cut in swathes. One frame, I'm 1.5 meters from the breach. The next, I'm at its jagged edge. The frame after, my hand is already inside the light. The light isn't hot, isn't cold, no temperature, no texture, but it writes itself onto my fingertips in a thin, viscous film. It exists. It is material. The inside of the chrysalis, that alien firmament, surges outward. Not light, the liquefaction of space itself. My right arm, plunged inside, is sheathed in millions of stellar fragments, each burning a different spectrum, each moving in a different direction. Stars flow up my forearm toward my bicep, defying capillary action. Others slip backward through my fingers toward the breach, defying gravity. I touch sand, not the interior of the chrysalis, not the substrate of that starfield. The sand directly beneath the breach. The torn tissue, the fragment of its core, flickering with impossible topology, is buried there, 3 centimeters down. The moment my fingers graze it, I hear the voice. Not through my ears, through bone, Vibration waves bypassing the eardrum, tunneling through the temporal bone straight to the cochlea. Subsonic, below human range, but perceptible through conduction as a crushing pressure. 2 more centimeters. Grasp it. Escher reacts. Not spatial distortion. Not temporal cuts. Direct contact. Its hand presses against the nape of my neck. No temperature. No pressure. Only information. Trillions of contradictory statements flood my spinal cord through the skin. Heat and cold reported simultaneously at the same nerve ending. Pain and pleasure firing on the same frequency. A man asleep inside his own insomnia. A door left open that is completely shut. 1 + 1 = 0. Does not equal. Equal 0 plus 1 plus 0. Does not equal. Above, every star in the Arrowhead constellation winks out. In the sudden dark, Escher's mouth, an organ it has never before revealed, opens. It bites the back of my neck. No physical wound. An informational wound. It writes code directly into my central nervous system. The message, asterisk, you have already failed. You were assimilated during first contact. Every action you've taken since was implanted memory. You never left the riverbed. You, don't, no, asterisk, my right hand clenches. The fragment is in my grip, hard-edged. Its inner topology leaks discontinuous light through my skin. Rays spill between my fingers only to fracture midair into disjointed segments. Each line begins where it shouldn't, ends where it can't. But in this reality of perpetual overwrite, it is the only thing exempt from contradiction. It is the lock, the physical inversion of a one-way function. The door. I pull back, not with my hands, they must keep hold, with my back muscles slamming backward. My skull drives toward Escher's face. I crash into the heart of that swirling nebula. Not ice, not fire, no named temperature. I lose the ability to define heat. Sensations randomize. I may be burning. I may be freezing. I may be both or neither. I may have already lost all facial skin in an unremembered instant. I don't know. No sense remains to sort signal from stimulus. But my right hand still grips the fragment. Then my hand lets go. Not taken by Escher. It obeys a new command. The byte's embedded code now parsed. It executes release. My left arm lashes back, thumb locking over my right wrist, forcing each finger open one by one. Index, middle, ring, peeling them from the shard. Finally, the pinky hooked on a jagged edge. The nail splits. I channel the last air from a diaphragm spasm into a sound. Not a word. Not anti-language. A roar. The roar overloads the vocal cords mid-generation of Escher's counterspeech. The larynx seizes. 2 opposing commands, speak and scream, collide in one organ, and the winner is the one that demands less oxygen. Roaring needs no grammar, no syntax, no meaning. Roaring cannot be learned. To master it is to erase it. Escher's vocal sabotage fails. For one instant, I reclaim my right hand. Bloodied fingers curl back. The fragment is mine again. I lunge forward, not walking but collapsing my center of gravity, using my entire body weight to push my right hand, right arm, and right side into the fissure. The celestial expanse that didn't belong here rushed toward me. As the material penetrated my skin, it left behind an otherworldly pattern of light. My left knee collided with the debris' outer hull, and my patella emitted a dull, cracking sound. I didn't stop. The command to halt had been suppressed by the residual roar in my throat, buried deep in my hypothalamus, canceled before it even formed. In that second, 3 things happened. I pressed the fragment back into the place from which it had fallen. I spoke a complete, logically flawless statement, but it was no longer a syntactically perfect, yet meaningless anti-language. It was a direct quote, almost never seen in first-person narrative. I can't learn. The fragment fit perfectly. The pressure sensation transmitted through my bones vanished, replaced by an inward force field. Not an explosion, but an implosion. A massive negative pressure emerged from the fissure's core, beginning to pull reality itself inward. The surrounding sand, no longer distorted, was sucked back onto the surface of the shell. The non-Euclidean curvature restored itself. then began to contract irreversibly. The field of Escher's existence was weakening, not leaving, sealing. The soldiers who had been assimilated, the one drawing circles, Luke facing the fissure, and the 3 or 4 standing frozen in place. The contradictory information within their bodies began to peel away. Luke's face turned toward me, his mouth still saying retreat, but his eyes had changed. His pupils began to react to light. He turned his head to the cocoon, saw it. His partner was inside, closing the door. The images of all the doppelgangers began to flicker, not disappearing, interfering with each other. The previous directional conflicts were nullified by a single centripetal force. The overlapping shadows, this problem of multiple directions existing simultaneously, were resolved by the singular inward pull of the contracting fissure. From 3 dimensions to 2, then from 2 to a projection with no thickness, they were stripped layer by layer along the edge of the fissure, sucked into the shell, and swallowed. Escher spoke even as the last image was being reabsorbed, using the same frequency that had once vibrated my vocal cords. It replayed the sentence I'd spoken, "I can't learn." Then, this voice claiming to be I resonated for the first time inside the cocoon's inner wall, without any subject attribution. The fissure closed. The milky white surface was as smooth as if it had never been torn. The rain that had been suspended in the sky fell as real sand. The order of the sand's descent corresponded to its initial floating height. The layer closest to the ground fell first, followed by the layers in midair, settling on top of the ones already down. Layer by layer, they overlapped until the original depression was restored to bare sand, with no trace of precipitation. My tongue was no longer bitten. My throat no longer emitted anti-speech. The pressure trapped in the 5th intercostal space on the left side of my chest, the visceral sensation that had been flipping for hours, vanished. My first autonomous breath drew in air at -2 degrees Celsius, the true temperature of the Sonoran Desert. The wind came from the west. The Milky Way stretched from north to south. The arrow-shaped constellation was not among them. The cocoon started to crack, not explode, dry out, simultaneously from dozens of tiny edge fractures. The milky white faded to gray, then to irregular translucence, collapsing into fragments, and finally, a small pile of what resembled inorganic salt powder scattered in the texture of the sand. The night resumed its natural soundscape. The wind, the shallow breaths of the wounded, the electronic beeps of the communication equipment as it rebooted. Harper knelt where he was, still clutching the half-torn glove fragment he hadn't finished ripping. He looked at me, his eyes focused, his lips parted. The sound he emitted was no longer doubled. It was a single layer. He said, "HQ, target eliminated." Then he was silent for a long time, adding another sentence. "Not for HQ, for me. Thank you." Luke crouched in his original position, staring at the water bottle on the sand. The bottle had righted itself from its side. The cap was still open. The water had seeped entirely into the sand, leaving only a wet ring. He looked up at me. He said, "Jesse, when did you go in?" I looked down at my hand. My right index finger's nail was completely split, the nail bed exposed, blood seeping out at a glacial pace, naturally coagulated in the cold. On the left side of my hand, there was a clear bite mark. The size of the teeth did not belong to a human. Too narrow, each tooth's impression resembling cuneiform inscriptions etched into the skin with microsurgery. But it no longer transmitted any information. The sky began to turn a grayish blue to the east. The radio resumed its standard time broadcast. 5:41 a.m. 3 hours and 28 minutes had passed since the first contact with the riverbed. Since that error, causality lost. Beyond the reach of the mine-resistant, ambush-protected vehicle's lights, only a layer of inorganic salt powder remained in the sand pit, along with 37 sets of memories, chaotic, blank, or in the process of being rewritten. The official report was finalized in the 19th hour following the incident. The final version spanned only 3 pages. Page 1. An accident occurred during a joint training mission in the Sonoran Desert involving the Border Patrol and the Rapid Response Forces, resulting in the crash of 2 reconnaissance drones and minor injuries to 3 soldiers. Page 2. An unexplained geomagnetic anomaly was detected in the training area, now filed under electronic warfare environmental test data. Page 3. The operation code was permanently sealed, and all personnel involved signed Appendix 7 of the confidentiality agreement. Major Harper didn't say goodbye to anyone after signing the documents. His convoy departed before noon. Luke and I were scheduled to be discharged 3 weeks later. The reason for discharge was cognitive assessment failure following exposure to unknown environmental stressors. I signed off on this conclusion, my handwriting normal, the stroke order correct. The readaptation therapy lasted 11 months. 3 times a week, 90 minutes each session. The therapist repeatedly told me that the encounter by the riverbed was a case of collective heat stroke-induced disorientation, and the cocoon was a misidentification of a crashed weather balloon. An Escher, this codename never appeared in any of the files I was permitted to review. By the end of the therapy, I had almost accepted this narrative. Then, on the 409th day after my discharge, at 2:11 a.m., exactly the same time as when the lockdown order was issued, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror. The reflection showed the corners of my mouth curling upward. That smile wasn't mine. The muscle contraction pattern didn't match. My smile uses only the upper fibers of the zygomaticus major, but this one engaged every muscle from the levator labii superioris to the orbicularis oculi, precise, symmetrical, perfect, as if it had been practiced countless times. My Adam's apple rose. My vocal cords trembled slightly. I heard my voice echo back from the mirror, forming a complete sentence. Grammar flawless. Logic absent. You are already here.